You're listening to the Avatar of the Abyss. Iggy Jacobtree here on 92.8. And, yeah. This is going to be my first broadcast for this channel. And, I've been thinking about doing this for a while. And, wasn't exactly sure how I was going to do it, or when I was going to do it, or even if I was going to do it. So much different, so many different opportunities to broadcast nowadays, as opposed to all the other times in history. And so when I thought about doing this, I really considered what it is I wanted to say. I think that's a conundrum, or I think that's something that kind of blocks a lot of people, is what is it that I really truly do say? And I guess people don't necessarily really know. We spend a lot of time doing things like being other places, other people, putting up phony effects for effect, and trying to chase ideas about who it is we're supposed to become and what we're supposed to do. I asked myself about why that actually happens, because unless you actually do the digger deeping inside, you don't really know. I mean, most of us don't really have a clue when we're born the world that's before us. I mean, it's laid out. We don't have a natural tendency to have most of whatever it is we're going to need to know within the few years that we live, and that's it. Human beings are a lot more complicated than that. Not always necessarily in the good way, but it's it's definitely something that resonates, and it definitely makes us look and feel as though the entire purpose of our lives is either to work or to struggle. In fact, I think people can kind of get addicted to that, meaning that I think part of the reason why people actually get addicted to pain, get addicted to suffering or drama, is because without it, there's nothing to hold up this other part of us, which is to long, to seek, to find out what it is that we truly actually want and where we're supposed to be. And I think that's, I think that can be a lonely place for a lot of people, especially those who don't have the fear of finding out. But I think over a period of time, that does actually start to happen. See, most people look at the world and they say, here I am. What's next? And I think after a certain period of time, that goes away. Eventually, people just start to get placated and settled into whatever routine that they have to survive, because that's what you have to do nowadays, is survive. I mean, I could definitely lean into all the other cliche things that are said about the setup, about the manipulation. I could lean into conspiracy theories, which I'm not a fan of at all. Just because something could be true doesn't necessarily make it true, and even if you don't necessarily buy the narratives through marketing and targeting and the manipulation that we all know is real, it doesn't necessarily mean that the overcorrection is the answer. Some people don't really understand that, nor do they really care. Not in a way that actually means anything. See, because talk is cheap. What we say isn't necessarily as important as what we do. But what we do is oftentimes not very well examined from our own spaces and our own places and our own thoughts and our own minds. I mean, that's how you get 40 years, and people, at least traditionally, when I was growing up, they suddenly hit a midlife crisis. I don't think it's necessarily a midlife crisis. I think it's just a beaker, a measurement, a point at which a person, regardless to what their age is, and usually it's about halfway through their lives, they start to ask the question, what is it that I'm actually doing? What the hell is this all really for? And unfortunately, it's by the time that you reach that point, you start to realize that there are less days ahead than there were being left behind. And of course, there's the pivot to blame, to obviously take no responsibility or accountability. And then, of course, there's the ultra way of doing things, which is to go into overdrive, to overcorrect in a way that means being a hustler, getting less sleep, being ultra driven to get or be whoever it is we think that we were supposed to be, and still don't actually know. You see, the deeper dive into who a person is complicated, because again, there is so much in the way of our lives, of anywhere from 70 years all the way up to 100 nowadays. And people live a lot longer than they once used to. And when you consider this in terms of life on this planet, I mean, there are very few organisms that have that kind of longevity. And if they do, some are much, much longer. Lives aren't really that complicated. I mean, there's some sharks, there's some turtles, there's amoebas, I believe. There's certain organisms that live long. But again, compared to us, I don't know that their lives are really all that complicated. Eat, sleep, and produce, I guess, what comes naturally from that consumption. But we don't really have anything else besides that in terms of other organisms. And I mean, there's a grand scheme of what the ecosystem provides. But I'm saying to you, in terms of a single organism that has as much impact or effect on everything around this world, I think for human beings, we don't really often examine those things as closely as we should. And of course, there are some people that think that there's a natural flow to everything. And there's a consciousness. They have a belief in something or someone. And I think that's fine. I think sometimes that's comforting because, well, why not? I think it's natural to long for things that are beyond ourselves, because when we're finally hit that wall and realize that we don't have control over everything and anything, or most things, I think it's natural to reach for things that maybe we think ought to or do. And then, of course, in the religious context, then we start to barter, right? We don't have the control, then someone or something that else does, that maybe we can rig the game. Maybe we can decide in some way, shape, or form that, yeah, I can absolutely make whatever it is. The problem with that, though, is when it comes right down to it, it's still not a actual control. And see, whether you actually believe or you don't believe is really kind of irrelevant. I mean, faith without evidence that's what it is. It's faith. But to examine, like all the other things that I've said, as to why we lean to those things as far as faith or whatever, it's like, it takes a lot more, I think. I don't know if courage is the right word, but it takes a lot, maybe more fatigue. I mean, I speak about these things in general, and I'm not really talking much about myself, but the truth of the matter is that I'm talking about myself right now. I mean, I've lived a life full of these contradictions and these aggravations and determinations that what is and what isn't, and of course, inevitably, I'm wrong. So that's where I'm going to start in this broadcast as far as anything and everything. I'm talking about myself, my experience, and what that means in terms of how I'm going to lay that out as far as this channel. But that's not it. I definitely have other things that I'm going to be talking about as far as this channel. Everything from politics to drugs to, well, everything. Why? Because it's here. Why not? I mean, I grew up in a time where basically to have access to what could essentially be millions and billions of people listening was truly unique and remarkable. And nowadays, if you have a microphone, if you have some kind of access to a social media network, kind of like YouTube, well, then you can definitely fill those spots and those things in between and maybe make them make sense in terms of how it is you access the world. And see, I have a lot of other issues as well. I have anxiety, depression, and of course ADHD, like a lot of people in my time, which some people say, oh, that's just, there's more of that now than there ever used to be. Well, that's because there's a lot more knowledge available than there ever used to be, although that knowledge doesn't always seem to be very helpful or useful in a lot of ways, because knowledge by itself, I know you've heard, is power. It's not. It's a burden. It's an obligation. I mean, of course, unless you completely eliminate consciousness, and of course there are people that do that. They don't think about the way things are supposed to be. They don't think about their role in anything. They just react. And then, of course, there are those who take the journey with other means, whether it's drugs like alcohol, or I guess I may not say the other ones. YouTube may not like that, and I guess I could get flagged. But yeah, drugs, different sources for the trip. And for me, and to me, I don't necessarily find those things useful. Maybe it's because I'm a control freak. Maybe it's because I have a lot of other issues as well. But I'd rather be as clear of mind and focus as possible, whatever it is that I'm going through, I guess, unless it's something more extreme, then juice me up, brother. Yeah. And if it seems like I'm babbling or rambling, or this doesn't seem to have any coherency, that's not by accident. That's because there's no script in front of me. There's nothing but my heart and soul and whatever that's in between those two ears of mine and that marble in my head. I think one of the very things that people kind of get drawn to on YouTube is a voice that seems to pontificate and know everything. People that seem to have a good idea, and then people realize that they can be echoed, and then they can react and, of course, mimic that same idea. Monkey see, monkey do. I think it fits for who we are and what we are. The problem is that, like all things, there's no one single antidote. I mean, I know some people, what are they? They whittle it down to a choice between the red pill and the blue pill. Which is ironic because, first of all, I'm not a huge fan of the reactions to that film, The Matrix. It's not necessarily a bad film. It's just a film that's filled with a lot of unanswered questions and things that people have to figure out. And of course, when people get together and they're influenced by influence, they start to kind of come together and form some of the same ideas. I think that's really how politics kind of gets where it gets. No one actually wants to think. No one actually wants to do the hard work. They see someone else doing it. It's successful. Let's follow that pattern and let's replicate it to its end, without actually thinking about why it is it works or what's going on. And I think that's definitely where we're at now. I was talking about knowledge and what it actually means. You can Google anything. You can chat GPT anything. But while that knowledge is stored somewhere, then comes the misinformation and disinformation, the fake news, the fake media, or whatever people call it. And then people don't necessarily know what to do because, quite frankly, if you go to the same reservoir to get the same fill of whatever it is that you drink up or you consume, you don't necessarily question where that source is coming from, what's actually feeding that reservoir of knowledge, of sustenance, of whatever it is that we bake in so that we think that we know going forward. And of course, once we feel that we've been enlightened or we've been impacted by something great in terms of knowledge, then what do we do with it? We don't sit with it. We don't verify it. We don't think about it and actually wonder what our placements are in it. No, we oftentimes run to tell other people what to do. We We lean into things in terms of our superiority and our ego. And that's, of course, when we're not distracted by everything and anything else. I mean, we wonder why we're stupid sometimes. I think most times we actually don't. Few people wonder why we're stupid until, like I said, they lean into some other vices or they think they have it figured out, and then the ego takes over along with narcissism and anything else. But the truth of the matter is that, we don't do a lot of reflecting. And we don't honestly want to know just how much work is involved, because if you can sit back, be fed, or you can drink, then why do you care where it came from? And if the idea is just to be the status quo or good enough, well, then I guess that works too. Red pill versus the blue pill. Here's the answer. It's neither. Or it's both, because they're the same thing. That's what people don't necessarily understand. See, Cypher was considered the villain in the film because what did he say? I just want to forget. I just want to wake up and not remember any of this and just live in the eternal bliss of ignorance. That's me. That's this fool. A problem is that same thing I said about knowledge is that once you know something, it's like you don't really have a blue pill to just make it all go away. You're stuck with the red pill once it's in front of you, and you don't necessarily need to swallow that, although maybe for some people that's what they need to call it. But we're living in the world that we have, blue pill or red pill. And the honest truth of the movie is that while some people think it has a deeper meaning, I mean, both of the directors were going through transitioning at the time, a bit before and, of course, certainly completed after. Although some of the people that cling to the message or the meaning of it in their own minds and ones that have become popular will tell you that, oh, well, it has something to do with something deeper meaning. Hollywood is lifting its skirt or revealing its truths about what's actually really going on, that none of this is real, and that, you know, anybody who doesn't agree with me as the main character is an NPC. Yeah, it's ridiculous and it's stupid. The problem is because just as bad as things can become or get, you can't really whittle them down to something as simple as things that could be true, so they must be true. That conjecture is ultimately pointless and useless. Why? Because that's not the way that the world works. There is no ultra intelligence or superior intellect. Human beings just aren't like that. And that doesn't matter whether or not your IQ is 0, well, not 0, 80 or 190. It doesn't really matter. Because the compunction and the impulse to be stupid is something that's baked into our DNA just like anything else. I mean, being more intelligent, having a higher IQ, absolutely does make you less prone to making mistakes and doing things stupid. But consequently, it also makes you more prone to making bigger mistakes than what some others might ultimately fall into. Meaning that you could make 10 different small mistakes that don't affect anyone, or you could make 1 or 2 big mistakes that affect everyone. And they still come from the same place as far as stupidity, because just because you know doesn't necessarily mean that's what you're going to operate on. See, a lot of people kind of misconstrue that idea that, like I said, knowledge is going to be power. No, knowledge is a potential. It can be a burden, and it can also be something that, quite frankly, it doesn't actually exist in the way that you think. Meaning, the ultimate goal is control. Control over what some people say is just their lives, their destiny. And if you have enough wisdom, you'll know how laughable that is. You really just don't get to have those choices that you want to make when you're eventually smart enough to make them and have them all work out perfectly. Because unlike other films and movies like for instance, Star Wars, right? The Force, the will. Yeah, that is unless or until you ignore the fact that there are other people, other forces that demand certain things, and seeking that control the thing that I'm talking about. Not only just over their lives, but what they don't understand is that that connection to everyone else means that it inevitably includes others in terms of their lack of control or ability to control or have power or, more important, knowledge. And that's where knowledge steps in. People don't often necessarily think in those terms because, again, we like to see ourselves as not always connected, even though we are. The ecosystem of this planet, and the one thing that people desperately try to ignore, which is climate change and some people think it's control. They often misinterpret it because depending on where you sit, it's alarmist. It's just people telling me things because they don't want me to do what I like to do in the way that I'd like to do it. Never mind the evidence. Never mind looking at the actual data as far as what's real and what's not. Regardless to your political bent or anything like that, just look at the evidence. It's been going on for more than 100 years, and of course we haven't been here for that long. I mean, individually mostly. I mean, as far as a social society, as far as our records, it goes back only so far, but we can see some things, and we definitely know. Trees that are bored in, rocks we can see that settle, and we can measure them based on how they're affected by the weather and the world that's around as far as the air, the temperature. Then, of course, there's the ice sheets. There's the different sources that aren't left or right. You have actual oil companies that have done research that have actually been specifically charged with actually disproving climate change, and even they've come back and said, yeah, it's happening. Now, there might be disagreement on what to call it, global warming, climate change, or whatever, but it's definitely happening. And so the knowledge, if you actually have the knowledge, it's not necessarily good. Because whether you are on the left or the right, the solution is very far from us. What we should be doing, what we are supposed to be doing, we're way behind the ball. Even if we snapped our fingers and did everything that we're supposed to, the knowledge, the truth is that we can't stop what's going to happen. And of course, some people settle into, well, maybe we never can. It's in the hands of God, which is usually a pivot to, it's not my problem. I'm not going to be here long enough to suffer from the reaction, or I should say the consequences of our decisions and what we have done before and what we're doing now, because it didn't necessarily start with us, but it started with an attitude. And the reason I speak about that is not because I'm trying to get you to do anything different. I don't care if you I do care if you recycle, but you're not going to recycle, and I don't have any agenda to change your mind about what you're doing. This program isn't going to be about pontificating and changing the world. This is just going to be a broadcast. This is going to be me talking about what needs to be said, because it's not going to be found anywhere else. Whether you blame that on the media and people don't want to know, they're being a political bent, I don't care. Saying what is true, that's what's the most important. And when I think about the world that we live in, like I said, knowledge isn't enough. We have more knowledge now than we ever used to. Like I said, it's a click away. You can find out all the things that I'm saying, whether or not they're true or not. If you know how to vet them, if you know how to look at sources without being biased about whether or not you like or dislike wherever it's coming from, but just look deeper into why they're saying it, where it's being said, and even if you agree, what the counter to that position is. And so when you get through all the minutia, it's clear about where we are and what we're doing as a human species and what our ultimate end is going to be. So the real question is that in between time, do you want to be entertained, or do you want to maybe take the journey and ask what is not only possible, which is a meaningless metric, what could happen in terms of making things better? Would you rather just be saddled with the truth? Because it's a cold comfort, and it's not something that's a lot of people are going to want to hear, and it's certainly something that whether it's our schema, our schisms, or whatever you want to call it, our avoidant traits, we just rather be comfortable. And I understand that. As much as people talk about the red pill or the blue pill, people want to be comfortable. I want to be comfortable. I've lived more than a few decades now, and let me tell you something. Comfort is the one thing that I think I seek more now than ever before. Aside from being a big shot or whatever it is I was told growing up that I wanted to be or what I should want or need. The truth of the matter is I think what is important, especially nowadays in the media and the news cycles that you read about, no matter where you're at, being real and being truthful about what it is that we want and where we're at is primary. It's pivotal. It's important. And that's what this program is about. I introduced myself before. Like I said, I'm Iggy Jacobtree. This is my channel, and this is the transmission, for want of a better word, but I think that is the perfect encapsulation of what I'll be doing here. This transmission won't have any set course. There won't be any agenda. They can be anywhere from 5 minutes to 5 hours. There's no absolute when and where I'm going to necessarily be saying or talking about the things that I'm talking about. It's just whatever is on my mind. I got to kind of work myself up to this because, frankly, I'm just as surprised that I'm doing it as if anybody's listening, you're here to hear it. And that's the other thing, too. Maybe nobody actually hears this. Maybe nobody actually cares. I'm just a man. I'm just a human being trying to speak into the void. Avatar of the Abyss is what I would say as far as how I feel. I stole or borrowed that from Andromeda. One of my favorite shows kind of growing up. Not necessarily a big fan of the actor or the some of the things and ways that change, but it was a pretty good story. Gene Roddenberry, he was a very strange and weird guy, and I'll probably talk about that on one of my transmissions here. But yeah, Avatar of the Abyss, Iggy Jacobtree. That's what this channel is about, and I actually plan on doing another channel, 92.8 FM. Will be another channel that I'll probably link this to. But I don't have any agenda with this. Like I said, this transmission will go as I see fit and what I'm here to talk about. So if you're interested in anything that I'm saying, of course, subscribe, comment, talk about it. Say whatever is on your mind. If you've got a flair to engage, I definitely welcome it. Not here to necessarily, like I said, change anyone's mind about anything. I'm not here to teach, and I'm definitely not here to sell you anything. That's my promise. There will be no selling. There will be no emotional dumping, as it were, but there will be me definitely talking about the way that I feel. And as far as being censored, there isn't going to be any of that. Whatever I say, whatever I feel, I am going to basically express that. And, yeah. I guess some people would say, well, you're being anonymous. I don't see your face or anything like that. And that's okay. I mean, there's absolutely no force for anybody to listen to this. It's just got to be something that's going to be natural. And that's why I said, as far as the prognosis, the aims or goals of this is just to be basically heard. And if you're listening to this, honestly, also too, I realize that if you don't have premium or ad block, this might be a little bit long and there could be ads. I don't have any control over that. But I will never put any ads or anything like that in front of or in any of this. And if I can find ways to basically eliminate that, even if it means not being monetized in any way, I'll definitely do that too. This is the first transmission, and I welcome you to it. This is Iggy Jacobtree, and I'm glad that you're on this journey if you are, but we got a long way to go. So buckle up, get ready, and Yeah. Until next time, take care.